Okay, we're diving into something pretty thought-provoking today. A report boldly titled, Why Britain Stagnated. Now, before you think it's all doom and gloom, let me tell you, the historical angle here is really interesting. What we discovered is that Britain was once a global energy leader. I'm talking OG energy superpower.
It's a stark contrast to where things stand today. The report really drives that point home by comparing Britain's dominance in coal production and its pioneering role in nuclear energy to the complexities it faces in meeting its energy needs now.
It makes you wonder what happened, right? So the report's main argument is that Britain's economic stagnation isn't just about recent events like Brexit or some lack of strategy. It suggests a much deeper root cause.
Yeah.
A difficulty in building new things, specifically housing, essential infrastructure, and energy production. What are your initial thoughts on that argument?
It's fascinating how the report links those seemingly separate issues, housing, infrastructure, energy, back to a single, fundamental problem. It argues that restrictive policies, many implemented decades ago, have made it incredibly difficult and expensive to build anything in Britain.
So it's not about a lack of desire to build, but a system that's practically built to prevent it. The report really hones in on the Town and Country Planning Act of 1947, claiming it completely shifted the incentives for local governments. It became more advantageous for them to block development rather than encourage it. That seems like a pretty bold claim.
And the report backs it up by detailing the ripple effects this act has had on everything from skyrocketing house prices and growing regional inequality to the types of jobs people have access to. They even use the example of Cambridge, a renowned hub for biotech, where the lack of affordable lab space is actually hindering innovation. Imagine that, a place known for scientific advancement being stifled by the inability to build.
It's like this 1947 act threw a wrench in the system, and we're still feeling the effects today. But the report doesn't just lay out the problems right. It digs into solutions as well, even drawing comparisons to how other countries do things.
Absolutely. And they use France as a really interesting case study. You wouldn't necessarily think of France as a model of efficiency, given their reputation for bureaucracy. But the report highlights how they've actually been much more successful in building new housing and infrastructure compared to Britain.
Yeah, the report's stats on that are pretty eye-opening. For example, France has something like 7 million more homes than the UK, despite having roughly the same population. That's a pretty stark difference.
It really underscores how different approaches to housing policy can have a huge impact. And it's not just about the quantity of homes either. The report points out that French homes tend to be more modern and are often located in more desirable areas, which further contributes to a higher quality of life for many.
And then there's the whole energy situation. We talked earlier about Britain's history as an energy leader, but right now it feels like we're struggling just to keep the lights on. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Especially when you consider how much we're investing in renewable energy. You'd think going green would make us more energy independent, not less.
Right. And the report digs into the complexities of that transition. It's not that renewable energy sources like wind and solar are inherently bad. The challenge lies in the unpredictable nature of these sources, which makes them difficult to integrate into the existing energy grid.
So you're saying that relying more on wind and solar actually makes our energy grid less reliable and more expensive to manage?
In essence, yes. The report breaks down those hidden costs, things like the need for constant backup power from traditional sources, complex grid balancing systems to manage fluctuations in supply, and the immense cost of upgrading our energy infrastructure to handle these new sources. These factors all contribute to higher energy bills for consumers.
It's amazing how something that seems so straightforward, shifting to greener energy, can have such far-reaching consequences. And it's not like we haven't tried to build new energy infrastructure, but even that seems to be a struggle.
The report uses the example of Hinkley Point C, which is supposed to be Britain's first new nuclear power plant in decades. This project has been plagued by delays and cost overruns, making it significantly more expensive per unit of energy produced than comparable plants in other countries.
It's almost comical how inefficient it's been. The report actually compares it to similar plants in South Korea, and the difference is astounding. Our Hinkley Point C project is estimated to be 4 to 6 times more expensive per megawatt. You start to wonder if it's even worth it at that point.
And that's precisely the question the report raises. Is the system itself a barrier to progress? It argues that the lack of clear responsibility and accountability within the system is a major contributing factor to these issues. When no single entity bears the full weight of cost overruns or delays, there's less incentive to ensure things are done efficiently.
So if we connect this back to the report's overarching theme, are they essentially saying that Britain's hesitancy to embrace new building projects is holding back its economic potential?
Yeah.
That we're too afraid of the risks to reap the rewards?
That's certainly a key takeaway. The report argues that this aversion to risk, this fear of upsetting the status quo, has created a culture of stagnation.
It's like we've become paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong move.
And that paralysis has very real consequences. The report connects this reluctance to build not just to economic stagnation, but to the social challenges Britain faces today.
It's not just about numbers on a balance sheet, is it? It's about the impact on people's lives.
Exactly. The report highlights the housing affordability crisis, how it's impacting young people trying to get on the property ladder and families struggling to find suitable homes. It goes beyond individuals, too. Think about businesses grappling with the high costs of office space or entire industries held back by outdated transportation networks. These are real, tangible consequences of our inability to build effectively.
And we can't forget about the environmental impact either.
Right.
The report talks about the need for a green transition, but it emphasizes that it's impossible without massive investment in new infrastructure, things like renewable energy production, energy storage, a modernized energy grid. We need to build these things in quickly if we're serious about a sustainable future.
It's a crucial point. And the report doesn't shy away from what some might see as controversial solutions either. For example, it suggests that nuclear power should be seriously reconsidered as part of the energy mix, given its reliability and carbon-free nature. They even point to our own history. Imagine if we'd maintained the pace of nuclear power plant construction from the 50s and 60s. We might be in a very different position today.
It really does make you think about the missed opportunities, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the question is, where do we go from here? The report suggests a pretty radical shift, a complete overhaul of how Britain approaches building. They call for a move away from this culture of no, where every project is met with resistance and bureaucratic hurdles, towards a culture of yes. What are your thoughts on that?
It's ambitious, there's no doubt about that. But the report argues that it's not about saying yes to absolutely everything. It's about giving more power to local communities, letting them have more ownership over what gets built and where they build it. This, they suggest, could help overcome that diffused responsibility problem that the current system has.
I see. So giving more local control,
Yeah.
it's an interesting concept. But wouldn't that just lead to more NIMBYism? Everyone wanting to protect their own backyard.
It's a valid concern for sure. That's why the report really emphasizes the need for having clear guidelines and incentives in place. It's about finding a balance where communities have a genuine voice in shaping their local environments, but at the same time ensuring that new developments benefit the wider community, not just a select few.
So finding that sweet spot between local control and the national interest.
Exactly. The report argues that this balance is key to unlocking Britain's true potential. Imagine a system where planning processes are streamlined, where bureaucratic hurdles are minimized, and where investors have the certainty they need to support large-scale projects. This, they argue, would really incentivize the private sector to step up and meet the demand for new housing infrastructure and energy solutions.
It's a compelling vision, I'll give them that. But it's one that will undoubtedly require some tough choices and maybe even some sacrifices along the way. Well, this report has really shone a light on a critical issue for Britain's future, wouldn't you say? We've explored the challenges, the potential solutions, and the historical context. But ultimately, the question remains, if building is truly the key to unlocking a brighter future, what are we as a society willing to do to make that happen?